Today I'm showing you how to make bonnet head wraps, which is a bonnet piece with a strap attached as an easier alternative to achieve your head wrap style. These are the materials and supplies you will need. We'll be starting with the bonnet piece. You'll need your outer fabric and your satin lining fabric that are both 25 by 25 inches each. Make sure that the right sides of the fabric are facing each other. Once you have them facing, you're going to fold the fabric in half, line it up as best as you can, and once you have it lined up, fold the fabric in half again. So it'll be in quarters at that point. I made myself a pattern piece for this part because I make a lot of these, but you can also do it with a ruler. So what you'll do is measure a 12-inch circle starting from the corner of your fold from one side to the other. And I'm just marking this out with a piece of Tailor Chalk. Once that's marked, I pin the fabric on both sides of the line. This is going to help it to stay in place as we're cutting out our line. When it comes to cutting, you can use a rotary cutter or scissors, your choice. I chose to use a rotary cutter. Keep in mind that because the fabric is folded, you're cutting through 8 layers of fabric, so you may have to make a couple of passes with the rotary cutter. And if that's still not getting it, feel free to grab your scissors and finish off the rest. Once you finish your cut, go ahead and remove the pins and unfold your fabric to reveal the circle. I use 2 clips to mark an opening on the circle and then go ahead and pin the rest, and you'll want to sew from clip to clip. Leave the opening in between because that's what you'll use to turn it inside out, so you'll have the right sides of your fabric facing. I'm sewing with maybe a 1/4 inch allowance, and as you can see, I probably should have pinned it up a little more so that the fabrics would line up, but at this stage, it doesn't really matter. It'll be fine. So you'll see I got to the end of my clip and we're going to turn it inside out, well, right sides out. Reach your hand through the opening you left, grab the fabric on the other side of the circle and pull it through, and you'll just keep pulling and adjusting until all of the fabric is laid out. The next part of this process can be a little tedious or a little OCD, depending on how you look at it. What I do is I take the needle and pull up both ends of the fabric until they meet the thread line that I just sewed, and then I pin it in place. I just like it to be as neat as possible, and ironing it, you don't really get to pull all the fabric out the way you need to, at least in my opinion. But if you guys have an easier way to do it, please let me know. So go ahead and do that all the way around. Make sure you still have your opening, and then you're going to go ahead and sew your circle again. This time when you sew your circle, you're going to leave maybe a 1/2 inch allowance. You want to leave enough space to thread your elastic through later, and when you're leaving that, because you're leaving that 1/2 inch allowance, you can sew the circle as a full circle. You don't have to leave an opening, if that makes sense. I also forgot to mention my top thread is kind of a rust color and the bottom thread is a black color to match the satin lining. You won't necessarily see the underside later, but mentioning it just in case you want to do the same. So we've set the bonnet piece aside for a minute and we're moving on to the strap. The strap piece is your outer fabric. It's 96 inches by 11 inches. I find the middle of the fabric and mark it with a clip, and then I fold it in half, right sides together. Do that all the way down the length of the fabric. You'll see I started to mark it all with clips, and then I changed my mind and started to mark it with pins because I'm going to use the clips to mark the opening in the middle that we need to keep. And then I'll use the pins just to hold the rest. But the clips, the red clips you see, help me to mark the opening that I need to leave and know where I need to stop sewing. At 96 inches, this is a pretty long piece to have, and which means you'll have to have a lot of fabric on hand or piece some pieces together. But the reason it is so long is because you want to give people the option to wrap it around their head a couple of times and do whatever styling they want to do with their wrap. Once you finish pinning, go ahead and fold your strap over lengthwise and match up the ends of the strap. My cutting mat has these handy little angle lines on it that I use to cut an angle onto the strap. This is another one of those personal preference things for aesthetic purposes only. If you want to leave your strap square, you can do that. Go ahead and sew the edges of your strap together. And remember, when you get to the red clip, to stop there and skip past it. And that's going to be your opening for turning the strap right side out. Now it's time to turn the strap. You'll do the same as we did with the bonnet piece. Reach your hand through the opening and grab one end of the strap and pull it through. Then you will repeat the same on the other side. Then I do the same thing that I did with the bonnet piece in terms of taking the pin and pulling the seam all the way out. Once I've finished this part of the process, I will iron the strap and then go ahead and top stitch all the way around the seam. I should have done this part before I started the sewing, but either way works. So when you get to the opening, you want to fold in the fabric to match the seam that you've already sewn and ironed down. So fold over the fabric on both sides, pin it together, and then you'll be able to continue top stitching, and that top stitching will close your opening. The strap is complete, and now we can attach it to the bonnet piece. Fold your strap in half to find the middle point, and you'll mark that with a clip or a pin. Find the opening of your bonnet piece and you'll position the strap there. I like to lay the side of the strap that doesn't have stitching on the bottom, and you'll want to bring it down a little bit past the bonnet so that when the bonnet piece is on, you're not seeing it through the strap. When pinning your strap down, make sure that the bottom pin is above the seam line of the bonnet piece. You want to leave that area clear so that we can thread through our elastic. In between your pins, there's one on the top, one on the bottom. I do a zigzag stitch, and I'm just randomly forward stitching and back stitching a couple of times to secure the strap in place. We're almost finished. It's time for the elastic piece now. I have 1/4 inch elastic that I measure into 21 inches and cut there. I have a jumbo needle that I feed one end of the elastic through, and I'll secure that with a safety pin. And the other side of the elastic, I will secure that to the bonnet piece in the opening. Once both sides are secured, I'm going to take the needle and feed it through the perimeter of the bonnet until I come back through the opening. Once you come back through the opening, carefully detach both sides of the elastic and reattach them to each other so we can sew them together. Here I'm using a zigzag stitch, the same as I did when I was attaching the strap to the bonnet piece. Go ahead back and forth a couple of times, maybe like a ½ inch in length, and we're just securing the elastic so it doesn't come apart within the bonnet. All right, now we have to close the opening of the bonnet piece. This is going to be a little more challenging than the previous openings we've closed because you have to work around the elastic and stretch out your fabric accordingly. But fold each side of the fabric down, try to match up the seam line as best as you can, and pin it in place to sew. When you're sewing this close, try to sew as close to the edge as possible. All right, the final step is just stretching your bonnet out and making sure the elastic is evenly distributed so you have an even amount of scrunch throughout the bonnet piece, and you're all finished. Here is your bonnet head wrap. I hope you all were able to follow along pretty well. As always, if you have any questions, please leave them below in the comments. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.